What's up, guys? Glowing Gear Studios here, coming at you with our newest model, the Monolith. Now, yes, the Monolith is my favorite character from the hit game Clash of Clans, but in all seriousness, I use simpler designs like this as a sort of cooldown in-between period while I go from complicated model to complicated model, and you'll see what we mean here. So, just to start off, let's get right into it. What are the basic shapes here? Can you identify it? I feel like it's going to be like Dora, and I have to put a pause. But anyway, look. So, we have right here, main shape, this thing. This is basically just a cube that we have sliced in a, what's it called? Using radial symmetry. And radial symmetry is what you see in nature, let's say with fungi, jellyfish, where the symmetry originates from a single point in the middle. So you could say like this right here, going all the way down, and it's the same thing on all sides. So what we do here is we have a box, right? And we're just going to basically imagine this. So we have a box here, right? And then we're going to slice it like this so that we have these angled walls, right? Then we're going to use negatives of rectangular prisms so that we could cut down, let's say, in these negative sections right here, we create these holes. These right here are just another set of boxes stretched out to make rectangular prisms. We're going to do more cutting here for each of these little tombstone-like shapes. These boxes over here are just an amalgam of different sizes, shapes, and cuts. And then this really cool, the top of the monolith over here, the actual component that unleashes the devastating energy attacks. This is going to be radial symmetry, but instead of 4, right, so instead of box, right, where we have, let's say we're looking top down, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, we are going to be using a radial symmetry with only 3. So you can see 1, 2, 3. So if I make a flat cut, it's going to happen on all sides like this. Very straightforward, as you can see. So let's get right into it. Let's get this show on the road. Alright, ladies and gents, let's get right into it. So, here we have it. This is the beginning of the end, right? And the monolith is unlocked at Town Hall 15, which is the end. So, all jokes aside, you'll see what we're going to do. This is the initial carving that we're going to have for the actual core of the monolith, like the pillar of it that you could say, right in the middle. I'm just really using my monkey brain to figure out what kind of way I'm going to orient the cube in order to get those angled shapes. So what I resort to doing is that I mask off a region and then I extrude it out, which is why you see how it has this elongated shape with a let's get that out of here. An elongated shape with that it has a radius that's shrinking as it goes from the origin point. So you can see right here, right, wide at the bottom, more narrow at the top. And then what I wind up doing, because I can't figure out how, at this time at least, I can't figure out how to get it right, I wind up doing the same thing, but a little bit less, and then mirroring it so it connects. So you can see right here in the model, like the actual Clash model, that it's it's not perfectly symmetrical. It's a little bit more top-heavy than bottom-heavy. And then what I start doing is that I change the orientation of the model to rotate 45 degrees, and then I do a clean cut down on all sides. And you see that I'm using radial symmetry the entire time when I'm making this sculpt, which is why you see that there are cuts and angles and shapes that are being extruded on all sides at the same time. So this is, by the way, going back to earlier what I said, this is using the negatives, right? Okay, I create that kind of cross-section with the rectangular prisms. I create negatives, and then look, now there's a perfectly cut hole going all the way down the middle. Then I use the mask. I mask off various regions so that now, I'm trying to understand how I could get that kind of trim, you could say. It looks like almost like, I guess, crown molding, if we're going to use house terms. And now that I have that, that's what's going to be that golden perimeter that's on each different side of the monolith, which I think is pretty cool. I think that there's a whole bunch of clever ways that you could do things when it comes to sculpting. You could obviously be more efficient, less efficient when it comes to various things, and that always comes down to your experience and your expertise. How much of this have you done? Do you know what you're talking about? So on and so forth. Do I know what I'm talking about? Am I just rambling? Perhaps. But you could see that I at least have some idea of what's going on. Now, What you see here, I'm trying to do that little triangle-like shape that goes around each side of the molding. That's on the top half of the core of the monolith. And here I'm getting like, I literally do not know what I'm doing. I'm almost getting frustrated because I'm like, how do we do this? So, yeah, this is now, I just wound up changing directions completely. I scrap that for now, and I move on to the actual top of the monolith. So you can see how I'm just trying to use the trim tool using three-sided radial symmetry to get the shapes right. Now I'm getting it, I'm trying all the various angles. I just keep going and going and going. And then there's topology issues. That's why you see that weird kind of gold-brown texture. What's happening is that the inside of the box is being exposed, which you're not supposed to see. And the program is like, what the hell is going on? So then I square off the edges. I duplicate it so that I could create a hole using the same shape, which is pretty cool, right? These, I call them negatives. There's another term that you could use. I think people call it booleaning, like boolean. But I just call them negatives because that's what you're doing. You're creating a hole. And then, again, I'm using nice angles to try to get all those edges out. And look at how nice that looks. Look at how clean that's looking so far. This stuff reminds me of that little thing that Iron Man puts on his wrist, where he, in like Iron Man 2, I think, he like used this like laser thing to just kind of bounce off his wrist. He only had like the one-shot thing. Anyone that's seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Help me out here, I don't know the name. Comment down below if you remember the scene. But here we have, I just did the top of the monolith. Oops, let's scroll back here. I did the trim, right, that golden trim. And if you see, where is it? Yep, right there. Have that golden trim. And then now I'm just creating the core of the bottom, right? This is like would be like the platform, the foundation. This is where the actual floating magic dark elixir of the dark elixir components of the monolith are going to be anchored to. So, right, then this is all the radial symmetry that I've been talking about before. This is, we are just taking the same shapes, and then we are using an add-on called, there's a whole bunch of different add-ons. You could do tubes. Radial is the one that I think is the best when it comes to, you know, practicality, at least for the purpose of this model. And now I'm making that tombstone-like shape that's around each of the four corners, trying to get those nice angles, get the edges done, at least to the best of my ability. This is a sketch, by the way. This entire sculpt only took around 3 hours or so, and you're like, Jesus Christ, 3 hours. And I said, I know, 3 hours, right? That's nothing. It's not nothing, but it also isn't, you know, that Bowser took well over, I'd say, 12 hours. So this is a bit of a sketch. Again, it's a cooldown. Also, it tests, you learn something new every time you do kind of stuff like this. So this is what I think is super creative. Watch this. So I said this maybe like 3-4 times in the span of 10 seconds. That is some poor vocabulary. But if you take a look here, I take a cube and then I cut on each of the four sides so that it has a point going right down the middle. See this, how it's nice and split? Then I take this. Oh, see, I just did it again. And I said, let's use the proper note. I took the cut cube, fixed it to the tombstone, and then I use the radial symmetry again to connect all the pieces, duplicate it, and now it looks extremely consistent in of itself. I'm starting to put the stones down to kind of lay the foundation, so to speak, of the model. And you can see that in the official model, which is what's been here the entire time on the left side, these boxes are all on a large side. They kind of serve, it's almost like legs to the model. And then here, watch how cool this whole process is. So I take a box, of course, using the magical radial symmetry. I estimate how long, like if you look at the corners of these little triangle components that are right next to the trim, I try to get a feel for how long or how wide it actually is. Then I fix it to the side of the pillar of the monolith. Then you see how I cut a hole right down the middle? Right, so where are we? Yeah, there we go. So I cut a hole right down the middle, trying to understand, right? I do a lot of back and forth because I'm not understanding what's going on. But then look, I wound up doing a similar procedure to what I did with the tombstone-like shape, where I cut on each side, get that pointed angle right down the middle. Then I spread it, so the width of it increases. And then I cut a hole right down the middle. And then I mirror that along all four sides of the monolith. And now that shape is internally consistent. It's getting pretty close. right? We're finally getting there. So I'm trying to get edges for, you know, obviously trying to be efficient, use shortcuts, trying to get edges for the trim. So I want to be using the trim tool. One, I'm not working, but you see that I go back to that in just a little bit. I round out and kind of square off various parts of the stones, giving it a more natural look, closer to that, you know, signature class style. And this is really cool. So to make the chains that you see that are anchored to the monolith's pillar and the stones that are underneath the frame, I wind up taking toruses, which are like the donuts. I mask off the side, pull it out, so now it creates a link for a chain, duplicate the chain, and then I duplicate the chain's link in a series, so that now we have a functional chain that could be manipulated, which is pretty sick. So I take that, try to get all the angles right, make the chain look nice and consistent, straight angle, and then I use the magical this is the word of the day, people, radial symmetry. And I use the radial symmetry, put it all the way around. I use the flatten tool to see how clean these edges are looking now? So I use the flatten tool to get that, again, signature clash style, where it's not perfect hard angles, but it's not soft either. And then I use texturing, just do some basic, you know, dynamic shapes and surface detail, so that we can bring the model more to life, make it look a little bit more professional. Even though this is a sketch, I wound up adding a base from one of my previous Clash models that I did, which I'll be getting back to later, adding some colors, adding some lights, and you could really see that now it's really falling into its own. So we have the entire shape coming through. I add the gold highlights, add the purple, get it nice and fixed, and you could see that we are very, very quickly approaching the end. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking along this long if you haven't already. I add a little dark highlight to the trim right down the middle of the monolith. I paint the little insignias gold, give the stone some color by adding some grays, add some more texture, keep the ground nice and green, just like how the tiles are in the actual Clash world, add some texture, and now we are at the tail end. We are here, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. Here you have it. This is the monolith from Clash of Clans. Thank you for sticking around for this long if you have. If you haven't, I guess you wouldn't be hearing this message, but if you have, thank you. And let me know what you'd like to see next. I'm open to suggestions. I want to try my hand at more complicated models. Definitely get out of my comfort zone, because as you know, that's the only way that we grow. And I'm looking forward to what's to come. If you like this, leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill at this point. But thank you again for sticking around, and I hope you all have a good one.